There ain't no grave can hold my body down.
Mark Davis has been trying to build a Super Bowl contending team for the last 8 years and avenging his father's legacy while doing it. Since 2001, the Raiders have been a team of bad luck. From the Tuck Rule game, then after the Tuck Rule game, they traded John Gruden away to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Buccaneers ended up beating the Raiders in the next Super Bowl. And you talk about, man, what bad timing.
Raider fans, with the first pick in the 2007 NFL Draft.
Then you fast forward to 2007, and Raider Nation thought they finally found their franchise quarterback in Jamarcus Russell, but
been considered one of the biggest busts in NFL history. While at Oakland, he won only 7 of his 25 starts and was eventually benched.
You go to 2010, the Raiders finally, had some success, but they became the first team in NFL history to be undefeated in their division and then missed the playoffs. Then we go to October of 2011, and that's when the great legend Al Davis passed away, and that's when Mark Davis took over for the team. Ever since Mark Davis has been the owner, the Raiders have been through a series of rebuilds. In the last 2 years, his tactics of building a team is much different than his first 6 years as the NFL owner. In 2018, Mark Davis signed John Gruden to the richest contract for a coach in NFL history, a 10-year, $100 million contract. And a lot of critics, thought this was a foolish move because John Gruden had not been a coach for 10 years at that time. And even his last year in Tampa wasn't the best. But if everything goes according to Mark Davis's plan, then John Gruden will make $100 million, which is 20% of Mark Davis's net worth, which is reported to be around $500 million. In this 3-part series, we're going to talk about how Mark Davis is trying to build a competitive team over the last 8 years as an NFL owner. It is Mark Davis's first offseason as an NFL owner, so he wanted to change the culture in Oakland by breaking traditions. So he hired Green Bay's director of player personnel when they won the Super Bowl, Reggie McKenzie, as their GM. This was the first time the Raiders have had a different GM since Al Davis took the role in 1963, a time when Al Davis turned the Raiders franchise around. He did it by producing wins in a philosophical way.
Certain philosophies of my own that had to become part of whatever I was to do. And that was, number one, what I call the vertical game. We were going to stretch the field vertically.
And he's also responsible for changing the Raiders' colors from gold, black, and silver to just black and silver. Now, I know Mark Davis did not expect McKenzie to make an immediate impact like his father did, but he was hoping he could build a foundation for a Super Bowl winning team. And give Mark Davis credit, he was willing to be patient if it meant progression. So basically, Mark Davis handed the baton to Reggie. And from there, Reggie McKenzie fired Hugh Jackson on the spot and then broke another Raiders tradition, which was hiring a defensive-minded coach in Dennis Allen from their enemy, the Denver Broncos. You see, Al Davis was more into offensive-minded coaches, so when Reggie McKenzie hired Dennis Allen, this symbolized change because this was the first time the Raiders had a defensive-minded coach since John Madden. Firing Hugh Jackson after 1 year surprised me because he guided the Raiders to a top 10 offense in his first year as an offensive coordinator. He is also responsible for convincing Al Davis to cut Jamarcus Russell. And at one point, he had the Raiders in the driver's seat to go to the playoffs until Jason Campbell got injured. And basically, Hugh Jackson panicked and he traded for Carson Palmer. This put the Raiders in a financial rut. And I do believe that this was the move that got Hugh Jackson fired. Many believe the reason why Hugh Jackson was fired was because the front office did not want a power struggle between Reggie McKenzie and Hugh Jackson. But Reggie McKenzie stated the reason of Jackson's firing was because he and Mark Davis wanted to bring their own guys that were different than Al Davis's. When Reggie McKenzie inherited the Oakland Raiders, it was the beginning of a deconstructional phase, which also made life harder for young head coach Dennis Allen, because Dennis Allen did not have the players that he wanted to fit his scheme. To refresh your memory of Dennis Allen, he was the defensive backs coach for the New Orleans Saints when they won the Super Bowl. He was also the Broncos defensive coordinator in 2011 during Tebow Mania. Even though that Broncos defense may not shock you on paper, They were number 5 in sacks, and they were the foundation for that team to get to the postseason. So Dennis Allen was hired because he had a good resume, and Mark Davis believed that he had his own version of John Gruden. But this just wasn't a good marriage from the start. Dennis Allen was put in a coach's nightmare in his short-lived Raiders career. In his first year, he was surrounded by an inexperienced front office with a new owner, a rookie GM, and to top it all off, this was Dennis Allen's first time being a head coach. I do give Dennis Allen the benefit of the doubt in the earlier part of his career with the Raiders because he did not have a lot to work with. The Raiders lost their first-round draft pick in 2012 and a 2013 selection from the Carson Palmer trade. They also lost their 2nd and 7th round picks from New England to get a 3rd and 4th round pick in 2011. But then their 3rd round pick was forfeited when they drafted Terrell Pryor in the supplemental draft. Then their 4th round pick was traded to Washington for Jason Campbell, even though I do think that was the only trade that went well for them until Jason Campbell got injured. Then they traded their 7th round selection and a conditional 2013 selection for Seattle's linebacker Aaron Curry-Chicken. By the time Reggie McKenzie finally fixed the Raiders' financial problems by cutting some veteran players, and the Raiders were finally able to get better draft picks, Dennis Allen was fired after an 0-4 start in 2014, and Tony Sparano had to take over for the rest of that season, which is not very good for your rookie quarterback to have 2 head coaches in 1 year. In Dennis Allen's entire time as a Raiders head coach, he had a record of 8-28. His offenses never cracked the top 20. Maybe it was due to the fact that he changed their offense from a power run scheme to a zone run scheme. And the players within that offense, especially Darren McFadden, claims that he was never comfortable within Dennis Allen's scheme. He was also criticized by the media for his failed quarterback experiments. And even though he was a defensive-minded coach, and the Oakland Raiders brought him in to fix their defense because the Raiders' defense, till this day, has not been in the top 10 since John Gruden's first tenure. Under Dennis Allen, the defense never reached the top 25.
Wanna stay down, no more. Hit me with the pain and the stab as I grow. Turn up the mic gain as I grab what I know. I want the right fame just to pass you my flow. I wanna teach the masses, like classes, just out of practice. So maybe you could pass this class called life. We live then we die, so we might as well try.